Tere kaunist.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a great pleasure to welcome you all here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is the first Market Access Day. And I would also like to use the possibility to thank the team of the European Commission who has come here to help us to organize this event. So I hope you all have headphones if you don't speak Estonian, because I'm sure not all of you managed to learn Estonian very quickly. When I talk about trade policy, then it is a somewhat awkward thing, because sometimes it might seem to us that it does not have much of a connection to real life. So it's kind of the same attitude as we have, that we breathe air, but what the air is made of. Then there is oxygen and nitrogen, so I don't really know what should I compare the trade policy to, oxygen or nitrogen, but maybe there's some other elements as well. So trade policy is one of these few fields where we can say without doubt that the European Union, that means us in Estonia, we are a leading force in the world. And in order to be that also in the future on the practical level, and how each entrepreneur can get direct benefit from the trade policy, this is our aim today. And now, as you all be looking at the screen, you listen to the interpretation, you listen to me, and now it gives me a great opportunity to invite here the European Commission Trade DG Deputy Director General, Denis Redonnet.
Well, thank you very much, Yuri, and thank you very much to you, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for the organization of this event, of this Market Access Day. It's really, for me, for my colleagues, a great pleasure to be doing this. Why are we doing this Market Access Day? I want to be very clear from the outset. I think we want to make sure that the trade policy that the European Commission conducts on behalf of the 27 member states is one that is geared to the benefits of all member states and all of the different economic operators and stakeholders of that trade policy, whether it's from big member states or small member states, whether it is big exporting firms or SMEs that are seeking to internationalize. And a day like this is an opportunity for us in the Commission, out of Brussels, very far remote in reality from the economic fabric of the member states, to interact with the national authorities, to interact with economic stakeholders and sectors, again, to make sure we maximize the potential of this policy, this European policy that we are conducting, and say on your behalf. As a matter of fact, also this morning was an opportunity for me to have discussions with various government ministry representatives and Yuri and his team, precisely to try to see whether we are calibrating the policy that we are doing out of Brussels properly and adequately to the needs and the realities of the Estonian economy. Now, I hope that the few things that I will say are going to be in line, matching, and reflecting that alignment that we're trying to create between us, Commission, and the Member States' national authorities. Given the fact that actually I took a translation device which actually did not work, I have no idea what Yuri actually said to you in his introductory remarks, so it'll be an interesting test to see whether in reality we're speaking the same language or whether we are not convergent. I'm actually quite confident. I think we're pulling in the same direction. Now, in the context of this Market Access Day, I think what we're trying to see is we're trying to review what this very extensive network of free trade agreements that we have in place at EU level is delivering. We have actually already in force 42 trade agreements with 74 countries. There's a whole pipeline of new trade agreements that are continuing to be negotiated. And beyond trade agreements, we have other forms of trade arrangements and commitments, and we need to make sure that all of these actually deliver concrete benefits. They provide a predictable and enforceable framework for trade and investment relations, because they create commitments in third country jurisdictions, whereas some of you might be operating, commitments in particular not to discriminate against foreign firms or foreign investors. And they inject a certain degree of energy also in our overall trade relations with some of these partners. Now, I think Estonia actually, based on the macro numbers that we're looking at, is actually tapping into the EU trade agreements relatively well and relatively effectively. In 2022, Estonia's direct trade with our EU FTA partners, and here I'm only talking about direct trade because obviously there's a whole benefit that comes from being included in some of the European value chains that benefit from our trade agreements, but even direct trade with FTA partners grew by some 20%, where it actually decreased with the non-FTA partners. So there is if you want an FTA, an EU FTA premium that clearly comes into play, and Estonian exports are actually making a relatively good use of the trade agreements and of the tariff preferences, notably, under the trade agreements. We're looking at the numbers of preference utilization. The preference utilization rate by Estonian exports under the agreement is about 73%, so it's pretty close to the EU average. So it's a fairly good take-up of the trade agreements, even though it can always be higher. If you start looking into the details, I was looking at some of the sectoral breakdowns, for example, exports, say, of machinery under our FTAs, actually do not fully benefit from the preferences that they could potentially benefit from. Second thing, which is perhaps worth mentioning, is the fact that as we look at accessing markets into third countries and putting trade policy, EU trade policy at the service of that, we need to look beyond goods and look at services, especially for an economy such as Estonia, which is very dynamic in terms of trade in services. For that, I think increasingly we're looking to develop new frameworks, digital trade agreements in particular, going forward. We have just concluded a negotiation on the freedom of data flows with Japan, for example. All this should help us to ensure that we have more economic integration in trade and digital trade and trade in services going forward, and prevent various forms of digital protectionism that we see across the world. The third element that I wanted to flag before finishing is the question of SMEs. Small and medium-sized enterprise, it's very striking, of course, are the backbone of the economy here, and actually they generate a very high share of the total export value, much more than for the average of the European Union. And so we need to devote specific attention to the needs of exporting SMEs in particular. And this is what we want to try to explore with you as part of this Market Access Day. We have developed a number of tools which we think can be useful to bridge the information gap that SMEs can face in accessing third country markets. And my colleague Peter will be actually making a presentation of some of these instruments, notably the Access to Markets platform. We want to work with you to make sure these tools are known, that they are used. Where necessary, that we improve them. We're ready to invest in these tools, continue to make sure that they expand in scope, they expand in functionalities. We have, for example, under these tools, a module that enables a potential exporter to simulate whether he or she can meet the preferential rules of origin for his or her product under a trade agreement. We think that this is a functionality that has value because it's really something that can help in terms of access to third country markets. But we're looking to do more and better at this with your help. This is why the triangle of us in the Commission, member states, national authorities, and the economic operators working together in terms of accessing third country markets is important. And this is exactly why we're very happy to be doing the event today. So I'll leave it at that for these few words, and thank you again very much for your attendance today. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to pass the floor to the keynote speaker, Mr. Peter Perts, who leads the unit F1 in the European Commission dealing with access to market and SMEs and trade rules enforcement. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for a little presentation on what we offer called Access to Markets. And I'm happy to see our banner that travels with us to these Market Access Days. It just comes from Helsinki, and tomorrow will be on its way to Madrid, I think, before it then goes to Greece. So we do these Market Access Days on a monthly basis in the member states, not always in the capital of member states, but this is the first time we are in Tallinn, so we're very happy to be here and spend a bit more time with you to explain what it is and how you can benefit and use it. So I have this little presentation that explains to you and gives you answers to certain questions like, how much duty do I need to pay when I export my product? Does my product qualify for preferential duty rates? What documents and certificates do I need when I want to trade? Who can help when I'm facing a trade barrier in a third country? So here you don't have to go to the official journal of the European Union and look at the EU-South Korea trade agreement, 1,500 pages. You don't have to go to the South Korean Gazette or official journal in Korean language and consult them. You just go to Access to Market portal. The QR code is here, the website is there, and if you Google Access to Market, the first hit is this website, in fact. So Access to Market provides answers to these and many more questions, and I will guide you through this portal. So Access to Market is supporting companies in all their efforts to internationalize, and here especially small and medium-sized enterprises who not always have the means, the resources to gather all the information necessary when they want to trade. It offers a single online tool for both import and export information, so not only going out of the EU, but also importing into the EU. It provides this information for all the products under the harmonized system and for over 135 export markets and many, many services. It's a living portal that is gradually expanded to cover more markets, more products, and more services. It breaks down the legal language you find in the official journals all over the world into practical information, and it's easy to access. It's online, it's free, it's multilingual, and it's what we call on the go. Who can access that portal? The portal is designed for stakeholders. And the stakeholders we understand here, companies that want to trade, in particular small and medium-sized enterprises, Also, individuals can access it, whether they are located in the EU and in our trading partner countries. Business organizations, associations, be that in Brussels, be it national chambers of commerce, can access that tool. And business advisory services. We have European-wide networks of small and medium-sized enterprises, of chambers, of business organizations like Europe Enterprise Network that have access to that system. And of course, member states' trade promotion organizations. We in the European Union, we don't engage in trade promotion. We leave that to the European member states. They know best what's good for their companies, but we work closely with the local trade promotion organizations in developing that system. So what sort of information can you find on this portal? You can find the tariffs you have to pay when you export your good to Japan. The internal taxes you have to pay when you export your wine to Vietnam. The rules of origin for your car, for your machine, you have to comply with if you want to benefit from the preferences. The customs procedures, the product requirements, also barriers. We record barriers in third countries that might affect your exports, and they are also listed in this database. We provide statistics and all that on goods and services. On procurement, this is a tool we recently introduced. You can check whether you can bid in public tenders in Canada, US, and Japan, and more countries will be gradually added to that. On services investment, we cover so far the export conditions for Canada, Switzerland, and the UK for certain services, legal and maritime, and accounting, and more to come as we speak. So here we have a map of all the trade agreements we have negotiated, that are in force, that we are about to ratify, and that are currently under negotiations. And some of them are unfortunately also on hold. And then the gray, light gray area are these countries with which we don't have trade agreements. So, as Denis just said, we have about more than 40 trade agreements in place, full-fledged trade agreements, not sectoral ones, but full-fledged, covering more than 70 countries, because we often have trade agreements that are multilateral with a certain group of countries like the Andean Community and others. And we cover, however, much more. We cover not only our FTA partners, but we also cover countries that are not covered by our trade agreements. In total, 135 countries in the world are covered through our tool here. And as I said, to complete the picture, it also goes the other way around. We cover also the import conditions for imports into the European Union if you want to trade with your partner country and want to import from them. The tools we have here is not just one tool, we have many tools. One is my trade assistant for goods. So the classical, I want to export my shoe, my car, my wine to a third country. Often we are asked, it's too complicated. Your trade agreements, we don't know what the rules of origin are. What is a Estonian wine? What is an Estonian car? What is an Estonian shoe? Because we originate material from many, many sources and countries. And these trade agreements have very specific, product-specific rules, we call them, to determine what qualifies as a Estonian product. And if the majority of your input does not come from Estonia, then even if the shoe is sewn here, it might not qualify to be an Estonian product for benefiting from preferential duties vis-à-vis Japan, vis-à-vis Singapore. And because all of these rules are negotiated with the partner country, they often differ in little nuances. But this little tool here, Rules of Origin Self-Assessment, or ROSA, will help you to determine whether your product benefits. As I said then, we cover not only goods, we also cover services, as a standalone trade assistant, a trade assistant for procurement. I will then say a little bit about the single entry point, that is when you can get in touch with us. And since 2 years ago, we also covered now export restrictions maintained by Russia and Belarus due to the measures we took, that you also can see what are the barriers we face when we want to import from these countries. So first tool, my trade assistant for goods. It provides, as I said, information about tariffs, taxes, procedures, formalities, easy to navigate and search because we see that not all countries are, or not all companies are really the experts in determining customs values and all that. So we wanted to make the system as simple as possible. And that's how the entry page would look like. You type in your product, for example, cheese. You want to export from France, you want to export to Japan. You press search and you get the duty rate imposed by Japan, the requirements you have to fulfill in terms of documents, certificates, internal taxes, etc. And that, as I said, for all products under the HS code and for 135 destination countries. The next one would be the Rules of Origin Self-Assessment Tool. Allows, as I said, exporters to assess if their product qualifies for tariff preferences that we have negotiated. It guides you through a simple list of questions by your specific product and offers also then information on the documentation you need to demonstrate that your product is really an Estonian product for each trade agreement, because they're all different. As much as we try to harmonize them, often these trade agreements are the results of negotiations, and then compromises have to be made, and therefore it's really the fine print that counts then. But we want to make it easier for our companies through this Rules of Origin self-assessment. The homepage would look like that. You type in your product. It then guides you through questions like, is your product consisting only of Estonian material? How much do you import? What component do you import for the final product? And then it gives you the result per trading partner. The next one would be on services and investment. That informs you about requirements when you want to export your services, when you want to offer your legal advice, when you want to offer maritime services in a third country, when you want to establish a business, when you want to send your people to maintain a machine in a third country. This is all covered by this trade assistant. It gives you the key sources for information, links it to the regulations in the third country concerned, and also the regulatory authorities that then have to approve you going there. We currently cover Canada, Switzerland, and the UK, and as I said, legal maritime transport and accounting, and this year we will expand it considerably. The homepage will look like that. You type in your service, it's a drop-down menu, legal, in this case, destination Canada, and in many jurisdictions we have sub-jurisdictions, like in Canada you have all these provinces that have their own rules, so a drop-down menu there as well. You press search and you get all the conditions you need to fulfill and comply with when you want to offer your, in this case, legal services in Manitoba, for example. Last one is procurement. So if you want to bid in a tender in a third country, with this tool you can assess whether you're eligible to submit a tender. You can access information about the tender that is offered. You can obtain non-legal binding assessment, whether you can bid by procuring entity, by subject matter, and the value. At the moment, again, we cover Canada, US, and Japan, and are expanding that as well. The homepage would look like that. So you type in here the procuring entity, the government level, you search, and then it gives you a list of all the ongoing tenders that are maintained by this jurisdiction, and then you can sub-select and see whether you can bid for that in that tender process, and if you are really interested in. And then we come to another flagship of our website, of our portal, the single entry point. So it's nice that you can see what we negotiated, how we can use the free trade agreements we have in place, the trade preferences, the trade tools, but often you face a barrier in a third country. You see that the third country is not behaving according to the rules, not complying with its obligations. You feel that they are treating you badly. So here we developed a single entry point, which is a unique contact point from the European Commission under our department here, that allows all EU stakeholders to report such barriers in a third country. I give you an example. A German car exporter complained about Turkey and said, hey, they want to have a certified translation into Turkish of this document, although the customs union agreement does not foresee that. Help me. And then they come to us. And we also allow companies, stakeholders, even associations to complain to us or bring a complaint to us about violations of commitments by third countries in TSD chapters. That means trade and sustainable development. That means potential non-respect of international labor rules, internationally agreed environmental rules, or complaints about the non-respect of their commitments under our general system of preferences, where sometimes these preferences are linked to fulfilling certain conditions in the labor and environment area. This tool allows then an assessment of the complaint we receive through an internal team of experts, and will, through a constant dialogue with the complainant, be it a company, be it an association, be it an individual, to then stay in touch and follow up with the complainant about the result of that complaint and possible follow-up actions we take with the third country concerned. The single entry point, if you face a barrier, we recommend that you first check, is this barrier already in our database? That is an easy exercise on our portal. You see it down here. If the issue is not already identified as a barrier, we have a complaint form. You have to fill it in. It's a mask with lots of drop-down menus, very easy to fill in, and lots of questions, but only 10% are compulsory. The rest, we ask our companies and complainants to fill in as much as they can, but often the more information the better, but not always is it possible to submit all the information we wish to have, but we don't actually need always. If in doubt, we have a hotline, so to say, where you can get in touch with us and say, listen, we want to bring a complaint, we don't know how it works, can you help me, can you guide us through it? Then we're always ready to guide you through that process as well. To sum up, how does it look like? We have on our portal, our platform so far, since its launch 3 years ago, 6 million visits. It's quite an impressive number. We compare also with other jurisdictions, but we are very proud of the uptake of that system. We had over 200,000 rules of origin assessments done. Remember that ROSA, Rules of Origin Assessment tool. Over 4,000 procurement assessments for 1.5 years only so far. And we do constant online and physical training today, for example, but we also have market access teams in our embassies around the world, in our delegations together with industry and member states. We have reached so far more than 10,000 stakeholders through our training programs, outreach programs, including, we add another, 100 today. And here, how you can contact us. So the Access to Market contact form you can find here. You follow us on X, our homepage. And as I said, every 3-4 months we do a big training event online. It's also recorded and available online on our website. But the next one, if you want to participate, is on 5th December. We provide here translations online as well. It's a live training seminar of 2 hours. With very interactive, because we want to engage with colleagues, with stakeholders, with industry around the world to see how we can improve the system, but also if they have questions about the system. Today I can't give you a live presentation because we have limited time, but here you will get a live demonstration how to do searches, how to find a tariff, how to find the rules of origin of your certain products. So all that will be in a dedicated training of 2 hours. If you miss that one, there will be another one then in spring and another one in summer. So with that, I better hand back the floor, Yuri. Unless there are any questions at the moment. We have a couple of minutes, I understand. This does not seem the case yet. Oh, no, there. Please.
Hi, hello, I'm Anu Malnaris from Visionist Institute. And currently we run major programs in Ukraine telling SMEs for the rebuilding, preparing them. And what we are seeing now is that, and in this database, what I find a very good source, what we see now is that the area of professional services like architecture, engineering, seem to have barriers even inside the Europe. It means that you need a certain education from a certain school in a certain country in order to be qualified as engineer in Germany, for instance, or in Netherlands. So I think that just seeing the big opportunity to rebuild the country probably as soon as possible, probably I think that just if you could direct a bit the work so that the barriers could be removed so that everyone could participate freely in the rebuilding. Just a suggestion, not a question.
Thank you very much for this suggestion. Now, this, as I said, the tool is in constant development. And of course, in architectural services, the problem is often that in services, professional services especially, we don't have a fully completed single market ourselves. But of course, in our engagement with third countries, especially in our trade agreements, we have often provisions of mutual recognition of professions, professional exams, etc. That helps then, especially architects or accountants or lawyers, to operate and get their degree recognized in the third country concerned. So you broke the ice with the first question. Who's the second? Okay, here we go.
Hello, my name is Olga Lavrentieva, Agriculture and Food Board expert advisor, and I would like to thank you for your presentation. I would like to confirm that we are using the tool. It's very helpful, but my colleagues suggested that we probably need to also to put this information on our webpage for our stakeholders, so they also have access to this tool. I have to mention that sometimes for food sector, maybe not all information is up to date, but I believe you work on it. And in future, I really consider that it can be very helpful for industry in Estonia. So we would like to promote it as well. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Olga. Just for the audience, we have not met before. No. But thanks. No, the system is basically updated on a daily basis with an external contractor, of course. But there is, because every day something changes anywhere in the world, be it the Kazakh import duty for toys, be it the Vietnam rules of origin for wine, you know. So it's a constant catching up here. But if you find big discrepancies, please do alert us as well. We are very grateful. This, as I said, this is in progress. It's not under construction, it's built. But now we do the fine-tuning everywhere. Who's next? Please.
Thank you. Mihkel from Aarakeskus Oy. You referred in the beginning to several possible trade agreements. I was wondering, what's the status with the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership? Is there a possibility of re-enlivening it, or is this not where the winds are blowing right now and everything is kind of protectionist? Thank you.
It depends where you look at, yeah. No, the transatlantic relationship is, of course, a complex one. And as you saw from the big map, with the big economies, Russia, China, India, US, we don't have a trade agreement. Or not to mention a free trade agreement. So we had several attempts with the Americans, be it the new transatlantic agenda, the transatlantic trade partnership, and whatever we had there. So at the moment, we are focusing on the Trade and Technology Council to look at very specific areas of cooperation with the United States. The time is at the moment not ripe for a new initiative on a transatlantic free trade agreement. We focus, as I said, on the more nitty-gritty work in selected areas, and also try to get some order in the house when it comes to the different instruments the current administration has inherited or has deployed in terms of supporting US industry. Okay, up there, Daya.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the speech. We met also just earlier, had a quick chat. So my name is Daria, and I'm from Health Tech Accelerator. Sorry, Health Founders. So I have a question. Will there be, sorry. Will there be also a section for digital health solutions?
For digital health solutions, did I understand correctly?
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry.
No, that's a good suggestion. Nothing specific. As I said, we cover in our tool all the products, and services are in the making. So digital health solutions often relate to the services area as well, and not only to goods area. So this is something we are developing further as we speak.
Thank you. I was thinking to talk about it on front, but actually I tried to find something about sauna.
About?
So we can't get Finns and Estonians on the board. We don't have sauna.
Oh my God. Okay, I have to remember that when I come back. Yeah, exactly. What is the customs code for saunas? 8-digit, please. Okay, who's next? Okay, our work requires not only my little team to work on this area, but we are cooperating here a lot with many services inside the European Commission, be it from the agricultural side, be it from the health side, be it from the customs side, be it from the digital side. And we work a lot also with member states' authorities. We have created a system to coordinate all that. And my colleague here, Denis Redonnet, is the Chief Trade Enforcement Officer, who ensures that all the system works together and that we deliver a good product to our stakeholders. And I really hope that we see the number of visitors to our website from Estonia increasing exponentially as of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Aitäh. Nüüd
Thank you very much. Then during this session, we heard a little bit about theory. So then there was a bridge between theory and practice. And now to conclude this session, we actually have a little bit more time than we initially planned. We will hear actual experience from Estonian companies. So how does it actually work if we talk about the implementation of trade policy in real life? And the introduction of the speakers will be handled by Priit Kallakas, who is the head of Economic Diplomacy Department.
nii, tere ka minu poolt. Lähme siis.
Good afternoon. Let's get closer to the practice. When it comes to Estonian export, 75% goes to the European Union. So today is dedicated to this 25%, especially when we look at their home markets, which are on the standstill, if not in regression. So that means that businesses want to look at the countries further away. So I'm really happy that today we have two really unique products, two businesses who are both exporting over 30 countries. So more than 50% outside the EU, if I counted them correctly. So one of these companies called Whom. So they are making sauna stoves, and the other company is called Dipperfox. And they are the ones who are the fastest at the tree stump removal. So in order for us to continue this discussion, so this is going to be a hybrid format. So first of all, so we'll hear about from Whom first, Siim Nellis. So he's going to tell us their story. So once he's done, then we'll have the panel discussion where we are looking more into details. And I do hope that as before, you are able to be active because your participation, your questions or comments are very welcome. So we have Siim Nellis from Whom, and we also have Raavo Kullamaa from Dipperfox, a member of the management board, and Vallo Visnapuu, who is responsible for East, South Europe, and Asian market sales. So this is our panel, and let us start. Siim. The floor is yours.
Kas tonglis siis või eesti keeles?
Eesti keeles.
Ahah, muu keel, selge. Tervist, mina olen Siim.
My name is Siim. I'm a founding member of Whom. So Whom is now 10 years old, and our turnover last year was about 10 million. This year, it's 12 million. Profit about 3, roughly. And we have actually too many people working for us. So this is the future forecast. This will allow us to grow quickly. So we are producing 3 categories: electric heaters. We have the controller panels, which are unique in the world. So, and we have wood-burning heaters or saunas. And now, if I entered this sauna looking at the Japan and US and Canada, then I got 0 response in this system, so there is room for development. So going to the topic at hand. Talking about the market entry, the problems are logistics, cultural. And then we can look at the legislation or standards. It's not that the rules are bad, but sometimes we don't know what the rule is until it's late, or nobody can explain this rule to you. You can see that in Europe, we entered the market in January 2014, American market 2021, and North America and Japan 2022, roughly. We established our subsidiary there. And I can also explain why. So, because this is all explained by market barriers. So let us start. Electricity. First of all, legislation of electrical appliances. So our main Bible here is this. It's a very simple document. Electric sauna. So household appliances. So this is a standard for electrical sauna heaters. So which adds on to the main standard, which is such a book, which includes all domestic electric or household electric appliances. So you can see these are IEC, so internationally harmonized standards, at least the ones who have joined it: North America, Japan, and Europe. They're all following the same standard in theory. It's very nice. So it looks really good. And now coming to the cultural differences. So here we have a combination of culture. That has a very strong correlation. So what happens in the United States when you enter that market? Nobody's ever used this standard. They are private corporation. There's UL. And they have their own standards. So UL 875. And absolutely everybody in this business tells you that, no, I need this certificate. I don't need anything else. Otherwise, you don't exist, because UL has done such a good sales work. We are the only ones, because we helped the lawyers and said, look, this is all legitimate, that installed, and then there is a requirement afterwards said that this supervision doesn't approve, because they don't have an understanding that this is all harmonized standard, but they've never seen this standard. So they actually started to copy us, because we're the first ones who followed this harmonized standard. So it's not that we don't want to do UL, but rather you can heat the room up to 90 degrees. But wooden heater, you could also use maximum 90. So the saunas were built this way, so which is ridiculous. So it's cultural, and rules meet with the people who don't know anything about saunas. and you can heat it for 1 hour. So you get the sauna heated up, and then you sit in the cold sauna afterwards. This is the rubbish. This is not what we do. So we left this aside. So this is rule from the 70s. That was United States. Japan now. This is Product Safety Electrical Appliances and Materials. So this is the name. So they have a guidelines, brand new, from 2021. And now it's the cultural part. It took us about a year. We have a company, and our partners found out that this is the book which exists. So it's not that easy, because the Japanese will not say no to you. They say yes, indeed, yes, they are part of this harmonized system. This IEC, look in the previous slide, then I don't believe anyone anymore. But at the beginning they did say, yes, we are part of it, because Japan doesn't have one thing. Culturally, they can't say no to you. And at the end, you don't know what's true or what's not, because there are many cases. I can tell you, we can talk about this for an hour. And you need local people, even if you in theory know everything. Everything moves very slowly, and this is normal for them. So first working meeting was 1 week trip, and it was the 5th day of this trip, because before that they didn't actually talk to you. And wood heating, it's 80 degrees. And this standard here, which is being amended by the substandard to 140, but because they don't know what a sauna is, then it says 80. And so this is where we are stuck in order to get the certificate, and then we can go going. But of course, we want to do things so they're done properly. So this was electrical appliances. Now, for talking about wood heaters, this is very difficult because they are worst polluters in the world. And here, there's a paradox. If in Europe, you need to have a third party, so it's an accredited third party test that you can sell these stoves in Europe. But in these countries, they have no rules in place. So you can just walk in and sell, like random stove can be sold. So this means that if our production is more complicated and more expensive, but that makes it hard on this market. And now if we talk about protectionism, so this is the best example. And Germany and Austria, they're together, we're very protectionistic. They have their own system. So the environmental emission requirement for wood heaters, but there are some special stoves which sauna would be on it. No, it's put in under other heaters which are like sort of, you have massive wood heating stoves at home, but you actually have a small one for sauna. So that means in real life you don't have any sauna heaters which should meet these conditions because physics do not allow it. We are one of 3 businesses which can measure all this. 2 of them are universities, and then it's the fine particles can be measured by the Environmental Institute as well. So this is where we have to function. Thank you, and now you can ask questions either now or later.
Suur tänu, Siim, see oli väga hea.
Thank you very much. So that was a very good start to our discussion. So as I promised, we're talking about US and Japan. And Japan will be extended to Southeast Asia. So I'm sure there are many interesting stories coming from there as well. So my first question, Olla, is for you. because I want to check if Siim told us the truth. So talking about Japan, so is it true that they can't say no?
Tundub küll, sellepärast.
Yes, that seems to be the case, because when we started entering the Japanese market for the first time in summer 2021, during COVID, then there were three options: a letter, social media, or YouTube. Japan was at the same stage as Lithuania due to different restrictions. So we sent letters out and ran campaigns and received replies, and they sort of faded away. Their funnel got narrower and narrower, and nobody was left really. And they didn't say anything. There was just silence. But those who I continued communicating with, in hindsight, I think it was by chance. But after I analyzed it a bit, then I understood that this is characteristic of them. In October 2 years ago, there was the Norwegian fair, the first fair after COVID when we were allowed to mingle. And I don't know why I did that, but I started sending photos or letters to all my pen pals that were at the first fair, and this is how we're doing. And the Japanese counterpart writes, send me photos. I want to see what it looks like before you set it up, because he also had to set up a fair and said that I feel I'm in the same situation. And so I sent evening and morning photos before and after. And then on the after photos, he suddenly asked, what's in the corner of the screen? Well, we were looking at a surface milling cutter, and we understood that they sell the same milling cutter. And then he replied that I will go and speak to my bosses again. And I thought, oh, you have been writing to me for 2.5 months, and now you go and talk to them again. That was 21st of October. And on the 26th, I received a letter, send your information. We will put them in the system and we will put together an order. And listening to Siim, then some things sort of fell into place for me as well. Or the second story, there was some kind of an issue, and I had this solution. He asked, and I said, yes, we can supply it. And he answered, it's very nice to do business with you because you fit in the Japanese work culture. And I thought, how? That you are thinking along, you have a solution. Now, if it's like you cannot say no, then yeah. We understand what is a sauna and heating unit and stove, but the stump grinder, that's something different. Before finding out about Dipperfox a couple of years ago, I had no idea what a stump grinder was. And in order for you to understand what we're speaking about, what is this genius product, then we have a really brief video clip. And I wanted to show it so you would understand what it's all about.
maapinnalt 30 sekundit.
30 seconds is all it takes. Bravo. When we look at the bigger picture, when you establish the Dipperfox solution, and started operating first on the domestic market, then why didn't you stop here? There's plenty of forests here. Why did you start looking at the farther away markets? Well, sooner or later, any Estonian company will realize that you cannot sell too many of these products to 1.3 million people. And that will not pay your employees' salaries. It's not possible. It's a niche product. Siim spoke about the US market as well. What were the biggest stumps you had to remove from your way with the US market? Well, speaking about the cultural differences, then I don't have much contact to Japan, but I compare US and Europe. The European market in a traditional areas, forestry and construction, is quite protectionist and very conservative. It seems to me, and our German resellers have said this, that the biggest fear for local companies is not to seem stupid. But in the US, it's a competitive society, and everybody understands that in order to gain a competitive advantage, you need to have technological labor or some kind of element that sets you apart. So in that sense, the US market is very good for innovative products. Siim, is your experience the same? Yes, absolutely. The cultural specificity to add here is that the Japanese are very modest, but the Americans, well, they are sort of close to us based on European culture, but an important nuance is that go big or go home. So this boasting or making all kinds of promises is very prevalent. There was a case where we had the biggest US partner and we were visiting them, and in the end they said, when you land in Tallinn, then you will find the order for the 5th container in your mailbox. And I thought, okay, very good. 3 million worth order worth going to the States. 3 weeks pass, nothing. And when the sales manager asks, well, their question was, why are you changing the prices? And I said, but we agreed the prices are 5 containers. Did you think that that's it, that you promise something and I follow it through just based on a promise? So on the Asian side, when we look at it more broadly, in Japan and Southeast Asia, the cultural differences, keeping promises, following rules. Let's put it this way. When you invited me here, then I thought about it and I wrote to my Japanese partner that I have this event coming up. Can I ask a couple of questions? Would you be willing to answer? And I asked, what did you know about Estonia? And what would you recommend for these exotic countries from the other side of the world to do for a Japanese company to notice them? First answer was that he knew that there were 2 other Baltic states and he knew of Kaido Hövelson, the sumo wrestler. That was all he knew about Estonia. And thirdly, or the second thing was that they look at the rest of the world through social media. And they are fascinated by what is going on, but they don't want to be the first to adopt something new. And it seemed to me that I sold something that weighs 850 kilograms and costs 24,000 euros in 2.5 months. But the Japanese guy wrote, Mr. Vallo, I apologize. Now we have only gotten your products in to the first rental company for the first time. It takes a couple of years. And with this container, with my American friends, I've discussed doing business in the US with the Japanese and other nations. The Japanese do not do this, that I will order 5 containers, but after they get the price down, they will only order 1. Malaysia, Greece, Italy, Turkey, their first question is, how much of a discount will you give me? Like a bazaar, just trading all the time. But Japanese people do not do that. You see, you get what you see. And if you keep your word, then they keep their promises. So the first year, we sold the most expensive device 2.5 months in, then 6 months later another one, 6 months in another one. And then it took a year for all kinds of demos, sending photos, video clips of all of this works. And then I understood that he has promised his bosses that it will work. He has promised me that he'll sell it. And he keeps working and working, but there's no result. And so now I understood that it takes a year or two. So the Japanese think that if it's available in rental company, then it must be a good thing. But with Malaysia, when Japan worked, then we invested, added Indonesia and Malaysia. And with Malaysia, what happened was that you speak to somebody for 6 months. The Malaysian person says, you know, I'm in Germany at a fair. I will come and visit you as well. He did, taught me to make real Chinese food that's not greasy in my own kitchen. His profile was that he composted palm oil residue, and the machines that are used were like 500,000 a piece. It looked cute. I thought it was very affordable and would help us to reprocess the stumps. But what happened was that he admitted that there's no business. But it's so nice speaking to you and communicating to you. I will try to help you find somebody who's interested. And I communicated with that person for a year. And as we speak, the Malaysian dealer is handing over the first device to a local municipality there, and is full of enthusiasm that there's another 123 municipalities to go. Excellent. With the Japanese, yeah, you need not be afraid of it. The Americans do the bargaining in a refined way, but the southern people, their entrepreneurial language is the bargaining language. I hope you understand what I mean by this. We have sold to Turkey, yes, and I hopefully am about to send something off to Turkey as well. So congratulations on the Malaysian transaction. I hope the 123 municipalities will follow. Siim and Raavo, risks. What are the risks on the US or Japanese markets that you need to consider that these things can happen, might happen? First of all, the US. The US, as we know, has this legal system, and we established a separate legal body trading with the US. To enter the US, one of the barriers is that in addition to company insurance, you have to have legal insurance. I can't remember whether it was $2 or $3 million for legal costs. It's just that. And there, like as soon as the client isn't happy, they say, "I'll sue you." That's the standard. That's the client feedback, and they start processing it. So I see that in the case of the US, that's the biggest risk. Secondly, with Japan and US both, and also Western Europe, partially, that they culturally don't know what is a sauna, how to use it, and then they do all kinds of fun things. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo along, but I can describe how we received a letter from the US. What material is the reflective part behind the heating appliance, because they want to put it on the ceiling. And our heating stove was put on the ceiling. So, Ravo, what's your risk calculation? Well, it's slightly different from our point of view. Our primary risks have to do with the fact that a similar product is not used in the US. Then the primary risk is that the user doesn't know how to install the product, use it correctly, and often the carrier is quite old and outdated. So generally the problem they have is that they say that our equipment doesn't work. Is it objectively correct or not? For us, the biggest risk is that there's this spread of information on the market that they purchased Tipperfox and it doesn't work. So in the US and also elsewhere in other markets, we have decided on this strategy that we don't sell to the end user. Even if we have an end user that we have the contact of, then we try to find a reseller who is capable of offering professional support to our end clients, so can take the pressure and liters and volumes for hydraulics, etc., so that there's a theoretical presumption that the product might function. Same for us, because culturally there's zero knowledge what is a sauna, not to mention that when you sell directly to somebody, then you have to be their personal consultant on how to build a sauna. And that's an absolute must. If you go to a faraway market, you must have local service provision that will take care of it, because you will not be able to do it. In the very beginning, we did that. Let's just put it this way. It was fun, taking lots of calls in the middle of the night. One risk is also finding a credible partner, reliable partner. How in Japan, have you found the right people? Well, with the risk, I wanted to continue on that and smoothly transition to the partners. If there's somebody here in the audience who has only one market, Japan, then it can be very frustrating of an experience, because you don't see a result really. It's very slow to come, and colleagues might ask, how do you know that that's the right contact? Let's change them out. Where are the results? And that's the first risk. Fortunately, I've survived the 2 years, so try to find another market as well, so that your employer is happy with you. And there's this interesting thing, video calls. Sitting here, like we can sort of cheat each other, do all kinds of tricks, offer some water. But when you speak to somebody on video screen, quite close, then like yesterday there was this program, I can see your voice, that they say that the eyes are wrong, that you can't tell lies to people when you're looking straight at them. And with faraway countries, it's a lot about gut feeling. Siim, how did you find your partner? In our case, we have a very specific area. It's a niche area where there are already operators, undertakings, and everybody knows everyone. No joke. So after being in the business for a while, then from North America, people come to Europe to fairs. The first US partners came to visit themselves, came to Estonia. The first delegation from California was 5 people. A day earlier, they had written to LinkedIn, which we didn't use at all at the time, and they basically walked in the door to our office, and I was like, hello. And turned out they were the biggest resellers on the Western coast. So clients have found them, us themselves. Validating them is simple. We just get started and see how it goes. If somebody wants exclusivity to be the only one, then, well, it's volumes, and that's it. I will pass the floor to the audience as well. You can think of comments or questions. Once you're on the market, you have overcome the initial market barriers, trade barriers. Then how do you increase your visibility? How much do you use digital marketing, social media, or like you say, you need to have a real seller on spot due to time difference, you don't do the selling here, and the physical distance. Let's take Raavo first, then Siim Vallo. Visibility, how do you stay visible? Well, as to visibility, we are lucky enough to have the same product that is very visual. On the one hand, yes, there's social media where we have invested, but on the other hand, I think 70 million is the US clients' video viewership. So it spread very well. But the problem with YouTube stuff is this is often done by guys who are out of date or who are not contemporary. To do business, you need to be on location as well, not just videos. We have the same. We have a very visual product, and Estonia has 10 Red Dot Design Awards. We have 3 of them. And our business contacts often have come through Instagram, for example, social media. For example, Kazakhstan, Ireland, Spain, from social media. After we had operated for a couple of years, then they contacted us through Instagram. Faraway markets outside Estonia and Finland, really, outside our cultural space. The sauna is a product that you don't really sell to the end customer. They don't come to build a heating stove. They come to build a sauna. So you need to train your resellers and find them, and it's their work to advise. And when we speak of social media, then Joe Rogan, for example, has our products, 2 of our products, and he's the biggest influencer in the world. Well, like Raavo said, it's visually enjoyable to watch our clip, but it's a two-way street. Many watch it and say, "Oh, I'd like to have it." Oh, so expensive. Okay, that's it. And when you're in your in the 2-year cycle with your partner, then you understand that you need to give them some exclusivity. You can't tango with several people at once. And now that I have come to the finish line with Japan and Malaysia, I think we should try it like with the Greek. We fix things and then we send short clips to the Greek and sent everybody to the Greek contact, and that turned into transactions. So fortunately in Malaysia and Japan, the price of click per customer is not the same as in the US. In the US it's $2 or $3, maybe even more. In Asia it's point something cents. It's in cents. Any questions in the audience? Comments? Ideas? Marilis is my name. I'm a marketer. It's very interesting to listen to your stories, and I would like to ask the following question. when you have to have wine with the Spanish, go to the sauna with the Finns, what do you need to do with the Japanese for the first 5 days? I understand that the working meeting was on the 5th day. Well, this is specific to my partner, and I'm not kidding. Smell wood. It was really tedious. I didn't understand that this person is enthralled with the wood industry, and basically went around with a little plane, a jointer, and took little strips of wood and smelled it. I have personal experience with the US market, and I see that you need the personal relationship. Ask about their mom and dad and family and cat. So that's the only way. Yes, it's personal communication. You need to consider who to speak to, really, who to communicate with. For example, we speak about Canada and partially in the US. The first real North American client was Slava. Slava is a Jew born in Chechnya who emigrated to Israel from the war, did the conscription there, and then emigrated to Canada in the 90s with a friend. And a couple of years ago started the sauna business. So looks quite traditional with a gold chain, 3 top buttons open. And this was COVID period, and my sales manager in North America had a second Teams call, and I came in as well, and I spoke to him first time, and we had 2-hour video call, and then we closed this first container and had the prepayment on our account in 5 days. And in the end, you have to have vodka with them, people like this. I was certain it would end up with vodka. My last question, if I may, and this is related to something practical. When we speak about SMEs, and you think, okay, I want to go to the US or Japanese market, what's the first place to start expanding your network? Yes, social media, LinkedIn is nice, but it can be a very long road. Do you recommend Enterprise Estonia, chambers of commerce? It depends on the sector. My first recommendation is look at the legislation. So if that site really works and I see sauna stuff there, it's pure gold. There's no point in saying anything unless you know the regulations. Then you understand whether you should invest. And same from Dipperfox. How do you get started? What are the first steps? I recommend before you go anywhere else, go to Google Trend and look at who is the target group, who your keyword speaks to. So people in our sector work in rubber boots, but on Google Trend, you see the geographical region, you pretty much see the industry, the sector, who deals with it. It's like selling dog food. You can do whatever. If you don't have a dog, you're not going to buy dog food. Speak to the people who have a dog. Anything to add? With the Japanese a year ago at the on a fair, they knew I would be there. They sent an important client to meet me, and I didn't know anything other than bowing. And I later got feedback that I was suitable. So be very polite with them. And it's a shame that this event isn't taking place on the 3rd of December. So for the first time, I'm meeting all the Japanese team at the Hanover Fair. It might seem strange, but I never had a voice call with them. Everything has been on video and email. So I send a video of myself standing next to the appliance, do this, and they send a video back. And with the Malaysian, we cook together. So if somebody comes from Malaysia, then they were very surprised that there's such high quality food in the local supermarket. We're out of time. The panelists have promised to stay at the coffee break, so you can go up to them and ask questions and get their contacts over the next 15 minutes. And that's one of the biggest wins of today. But I have one more quick question for everyone. We're at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have 40 representative offices, 180 honorary consuls. We work closely with Enterprise Estonia in supporting companies. Have you had any help from the state? If not, what would you like from the state, if at all? The benefit from the state has been that well, Enterprise Estonia has helped a little, and now this year 30%, next year 50% of the metal production and heating bodies, if we get certification, we took to Ukraine, where we have the moral gain as well. And what else the state can do is help spread the word. I offered a Bible for this building, 374 pages translated in English, then Japanese, Spanish, Finnish, French, German languages, and it's called sauna, and it's unique in the world. It's a history, culture, medical function, construction of saunas, and includes a representative survey of use of sauna in Estonia. It's more than 500 sources that have been used. It's a piece of research. 4 people wrote it over 3 years. There's no other book like this on earth. The Finns are really jealous of us. So we can share our culture, and that's how you can help us, for example. We have the book, we'll spread it around. Bravo. It's quite good work that the EU is doing with the free trade agreement. Our first contact with the Canadian seller was that you saw how relieved they were when they saw that Estonia was in the EU. Because their previous experience with Nordic companies had been with the Norwegians. And they've come up with a very complicated scheme how the goods are taken from Norway to Sweden and then to Canada, because it's very complicated to ship from Norway to Canada. And with us, it's easy. Since we're at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then let's praise the Ministry of Foreign Affairs first and foremost. I went together with the Chamber of Commerce to Moldavia, and when they understood what countries I cover, then they really praised the Kazakhstan ambassador, who had to cover the entire region. Since we are speaking about Asia, then if you are going to Asia, then this ambassador is supposed to be very efficient. Thank you. An applause to the panelists. Thank you for coming. Thank you. That was the end of this session. Our Market Access Day is special in the sense that usually at these events we don't have the Trade Commissioner participating, but today we do. So 10-minute break and then we'll continue.
tere tulemast tagasi.
Welcome back. So as was said before the coffee break, then in Estonia we have the Market Access Day. So this is special because we have here the Executive Vice President of European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis. Usually this doesn't really happen during Market Access Day, so it's a great pleasure for us. I suppose the speaker does not really need a lot of introduction because he has held his position a few times as a vice president. Before that, he's been a prime minister of Latvia, and of course, a commissioner who Estonians have been admiring. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tere päivästä. Mul on nii hea meel Tallinnas olla. It's a great pleasure being here with you. Tallinn is a European capital that continues to impress. Not only because it just has been awarded the European Green Capital Award, or because it's home to so many startups or unicorns that help cement Estonia's status as one of the most innovative and digitally advanced places in the world. I would argue that above all, it's because of your openness of your economy and your society to the world. I highly value these market access days because they allow for direct exchanges between us. It is very helpful to hear about your hands-on experience on the ground, because ultimately trade is done by you each and every day. That is why I would like to encourage you to fully use the tools that we have presented to you today. This feedback from you helps us to ensure that our agreements work the way they were meant to. And together we ensure that we get most out of our rights and privileges that we have negotiated for you in our free trade agreements. Against this backdrop, I would like to use my intervention to give you a bird's eye view on the latest development on the EU's trade agenda. There have been a lot of achievements over this mandate. So let me start with the obvious. Today has been a field day of what one might call all of us trade geeks. Single entry point, access to markets, these are buzzwords that outsiders may label as technical, but nothing could be further from truth. I say when we are talking market access, when we are talking barriers to trade, when we are talking openness and free trade agreements, we are talking geopolitics. And who knows that better than Estonia or the Baltics? We have a next-door neighbor that is not only waging war against Ukraine, it's waging a war on our energy, on our supply chains, and on our democracies. In fact, we have been among the first to warn loudly and strongly about the dangers of our dependencies on Russia in our energy supply. This time, we must make sure that we are heard and we act strongly against the aggressors. The risks are too high in our region and globally as we see a conflict in the Middle East and ongoing Russian aggression. The impact of Russia's war against Ukraine reverberates well beyond Europe's borders. It has shaken the foundations of an international order that we have known for decades. The ramifications of Kremlin's brazen aggression has caused the world to become more polarized, more conflicted, and more fragmented. So it's important to keep in mind that trade is part of the greater strategic puzzle. Trade is a geopolitical instrument. I will come back on this to illustrate how we use this instrument to support Ukraine. Openness is key for the EU. We remain the largest trading bloc in the world. 1 in 5 jobs in the EU depends on trade. For Estonia, a small open economy, numbers are even more impressive. Estonian extra EU exports support 138,000 jobs in Estonia, and another 31,000 Estonian workers are in jobs linked to exports from other EU countries to the world. This means that 26% of jobs in Estonia depend on extra EU exports. We just had some discussions with colleagues on those figures and agree that our experts need to get together maybe to compare the methodologies and compare the notes. But in any case, we need to continue building on that. Our primary area of focus remains reforming the World Trade Organization. It is because even today, with all the hype about bilateral trade agreements, about 56% of our trade is done on the basis of WTO tariffs. And there is reason for this. WTO rules are what creates stability in today's unstable times. They provide a basic common understanding on how to conduct trade among its 164 members, including setting rules against discriminatory treatment. At the same time, it's more important than ever to continue spinning the web of our partnerships across the globe. This is why we continue investing in our bilateral trade relationships. We already have one of the largest networks of trade agreements in the world, and we are continuing to expand it. Negotiations with Chile and Kenya have recently been concluded. The agreement with New Zealand has just been signed, and we are making every effort to finalize talks with Mexico and Mercosur, while advancing negotiations with Australia, India, and a number of ASEAN countries. The essence today is to have flexible approaches. The time of one-size-fits-all solutions is over. In certain cases, a traditional trade agreement will be the right approach. In other cases, we need other arrangements that allow us to focus on specific issues of mutual interest. Here, our trade and technology councils with the United States and India, our digital trade agreements, the raw materials partnerships, the sustainable investment facilitation agreements, and other partnerships come in. Now moving to the digital sphere. I know that I am preaching to the converted here when I talk about importance of all things digital. Time and time again, Estonia has proven the champion of advanced digital solutions, be it e-government, e-voting, or digitalization of business. Despite your size, you are a heavyweight in the European tech ecosystem, and you are going from strength to strength every year. Estonia has a world-class track record on building unicorns. So I think it's safe to say when we talk digital, we talk Estonia. Digital trade is at the heart of EU's trade strategy and a priority for the Commission as part of the EU's wider digital transition. It is essential that in this process, the EU is a rule maker, not a rule taker. This is why we are leading efforts to accelerate ongoing WTO e-commerce negotiations, prolonging e-commerce moratorium, and pushing for ambitious outcomes. And this matters because 89 participating countries account to the over 90% of the global trade. At the same time, we are going full steam ahead to negotiate the digital trade rules bilaterally. The first digital trade chapter in trade agreement was with the UK, followed by the New Zealand. We need to reach further, especially in the Indo-Pacific. Not only this region is of geopolitical importance, but it's also at the heart of growth of digital economy. It is there that the digital trade rules of 21st century are developed as we speak. We agreed to launch digital trade principles with Singapore before summer. Just last week, we concluded our negotiations on cross-border data flows with Japan and launched digital trade agreement negotiations with South Korea. We are also negotiating digital trade rules with Australia, Indonesia, India, Thailand as part of our ongoing free trade agreement negotiations. And all of that matters for EU companies. Let me give you just two examples. Digital trade agreements ensure that Estonian companies can compete with companies in other countries on an equal basis by preventing and removing digital trade barriers in those countries. This includes, for instance, the prohibition of data localization requirements, which allows Estonian companies to use their own data centers as a basis for cross-border data flows. Digital trade agreements also ensure that Estonian consumers are protected from fraudulent and deceptive practices when they are engaging in e-commerce transactions to buy goods or services on online platforms in other countries, and that they receive correct information about purchases from suppliers. This enhances the protection of Estonian consumers online and contributes to the trust in cross-border e-commerce. So let me be clear. Our industry has consistently been asking for digital rules. We have much to gain from a network of trade agreements that promotes openness of digital trade, cross-border data flows with trust, and convergence with the EU's values-based digital rulebook. Nevertheless, openness can only work in today's world if it's not abused. This is why we have such a strong reorientation on what we refer to assertiveness agenda. Just to take China's trade embargo against Lithuania. As you know, the EU stood by Lithuania in words and in deeds and brought the case against China in the WTO. However, litigations at the WTO take time and do not always work as a deterrent. A more power-based world requires a better set of tools to be able to react swiftly and effectively to emerging challenges. This is the essence of recent economic security strategy. Just a month ago, an overwhelming majority of members of European Parliament has endorsed our new anti-coercion instrument. And it has just been adopted by the Council. This is a major boost to the EU's ability to defend itself, so we are aiming for its entry into force before end of the year. It means we can deal more effectively with those who do not play by the rules or those who use economic coercion to pursue political goals. Last year, we also adopted the International Procurement Instrument and the Foreign Subsidies Regulation. We are also reviewing our screening of foreign direct investments coming into the EU to allow us to block third country investments into strategic EU sectors where they pose security risks. We have stepped up our export controls to ensure that exports of certain EU goods and technologies to third countries do not create security risks for the EU. We are also assessing whether there are risks of leakage of export-controlled technology to destinations of concerns via investments from the EU into the third countries. In addition, our unprecedented packages of sanctions against Russia to respond to Russia's war of aggression show that it's possible when we all, what is possible when we all pull on the same rope. The strategic importance of EU unity shouldn't be lost to anyone, as it will be make or break of our geopolitical future. Let me finish with a few remarks on the very last point I gave you as an example, which illustrates that trade is a geopolitical instrument. Since the start of Russia's full-scale war last year, the EU has prioritized the importance of keeping Ukraine's economy going. For trade, a strongest signal of EU support and solidarity is that duties and trade defense measures on Ukrainian exports to the EU have been fully suspended since June 2022. This has created direct positive economic impact for Ukraine, and the measures are extended for another year till June 2024. In addition, we have, together with Ukraine and Moldova, established the EU-Ukraine solidarity lanes. These are essential corridors to ensure that Ukraine can export grain and other agricultural products, but also import goods it needs from humanitarian aid to animal feed and fertilizers. This is vital to get grain out of Ukraine to the rest of the world. It is also key to counter Russia's weaponization of food supplies, which is negatively affecting global food security and hurting the developing countries most. All of this is crucial to both help Ukraine win this war and also for the longer-term recovery. Unwavering EU support helps Ukraine to maintain its trade position in the rest of the world, while further deepening its trade relations with the EU. Ukraine is already on the right path with a close EU engagement on many levels. It is implementing the priority action plan for closer integration into EU's single market. It is tackling corruption based on guidelines provided by the EU, and it is carrying out reforms in line with the EU financial support programs. Lastly, there is a need to keep up pressure on Russia. The EU continues to play a major role in global response to condemn Russia for its illegal aggression against Ukraine. In conclusion, EU trade is our geopolitical instrument to protect EU's competitiveness, support economic growth, and our strategic approach globally. Thank you.
Thank you. I have understood that you are ready to take some questions.
Yes.
Is that true? If so, any brave souls? This chance might not repeat itself.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Is there been any kind of instruments called to life to encourage European businesses to bring part of their work to Ukraine to help, especially heavy industry, to survive during the wartime? Because it has lost its turnover around 60 to 70%.
I was already mentioning some of the support which we are providing to keep Ukraine's economy going, with basically ensuring full unilateral EU market openness for Ukrainian goods, be it agricultural or industrial goods, also by suspending our trade defense measures. Certainly, when we are talking about Ukrainian economy, especially about Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction, it's important to bring private investment into Ukraine. Currently, the biggest obstacle is obviously the fact that there is a war raging in Ukraine and how to protect those investments. So it's a question about war insurance, something which we are currently working on. There is already EBRD pilot project in this regard being undertaken, and we are also looking at other ways how we can facilitate this war insurance, because that's key to de-risking those investments which potentially could go into Ukraine.
Sorry, yes, it was not actually about investments. Like, for example, we produce our metal parts in our company, heaters, next year 50% in Ukraine. They need job, not investments. They have all machinery, they have professionals, they just sit there doing nothing. And that's the biggest problem actually at the moment in economy.
Okay, but then it brings us back to the question of Ukrainian exports to the EU.
Yes.
Okay, but on exports to the EU, I already was mentioning that we took the autonomous trade measures, so fully liberalizing the trade with Ukraine. I would say rest is in the hands of private operators to decide on practical import-export operations which they want to undertake. And probably in this regard, I would mention, I mentioned briefly this priority action plan of Ukraine's integration in a single market. And one of the elements is also so-called ACA agreement on industrial conformity assessment, which would also facilitate Ukraine's industrial production exports to the EU. So from industrial exports point of view, and I would indeed underline those autonomous trade measures and this priority action plan on Ukraine's integration in a single market.
Hello. Also, my question is about Ukraine. As we are currently working in Ukraine, helping them to prepare for the rebuilding, having several hundreds of companies, SMEs, participating in our training program. My question is, actually there are two questions. I know that Estonia has been really in front building the new kindergartens and reconstructing the bridges. My first question is that is EU going to wait until the war ends and then coming in as a rebuilder, or are you going to do it quicker? And my second question is that how? What is the best understanding today, what you have, how to rebuild Ukraine quickly?
First of all, it's clear that we cannot wait for reconstruction until the war is over. So if you look at our current financial support programs to Ukraine, we have our macro financial assistance plus. We have also what we call a quick reconstruction program, which was, when it was prepared, it was primarily focusing on the situation which we were facing early last winter when Russia was intensively bombing Ukraine's critical infrastructure, including energy infrastructure. So we were supporting kind of a quick reconstruction, repairs of this infrastructure so that there is a minimum functionality of critical infrastructure. Also on connectivity issues, including bridges. When I was visiting Kiev, I was personally visiting also one of the bridges which was reconstructed with the support of EU funding. So clearly that there is this quick reconstruction need which we need to support Ukraine. And then for a longer term reconstruction, as you know, from European Commission, we put forward a proposal of 50 billion euros Ukraine facility for 2024 to 2027. On this, we are already in November. What is important is that EU member states are now finalizing the discussions and actually deciding on this Ukraine facility so that the money can start flowing to Ukraine already as of beginning of the next year.
Sorry, just one more question. Who is coordinating it, or how do you plan to coordinate it all over the Europe, the support for rebuilding in Ukraine?
On coordination, there actually, I would say, a number of coordination instruments. So first of all, EU is not the only one providing financial support to Ukraine. It's also US, it's also other countries, it's IMF, it's World Bank, it's European financial institutions. So for this purpose, we have what we call multi-donor coordination platform, which is dealing exactly with coordinating all this work across different donors internationally and within the EU. Certainly, it's something which we are trying to do from the European Commission side, also using so-called Team Europe approach when we are working together, European institutions, European EU member states and European financial institutions indeed coordinating this approach to the extent possible. As regards this Ukraine facility, the idea is that it would be for Ukraine to draw its Ukraine reconstruction plan, how Ukraine would be using those 50 billion euros which are available for this Ukraine facility, and then the money would be spent according to this Ukraine reconstruction plan.
As an IT entrepreneur, I have a question regarding AI. I have read a few studies, and they all say that the usage of AI is much higher in US and also in China, of course. Any plans in European Union how to also reach the higher usage of AI?
As you know, we are having our own EU AI strategy and the approach which we call human-centric artificial intelligence, and I would say its development is part of the work of EU's digital transformation and EU's digital decade. So I'd say there is actually quite intensive work ongoing on AI also in the EU. And AI is also one of the topics which we are coordinating with US in a framework of EU-US Trade and Technology Council, because indeed it's a new development. As we know, there are also certain concerns about development of this technology, so it's important that we stay coordinated with other major players, and that we are having this regulation in a way that is actually reflecting also our democratic values.
Thank you, Executive Vice President. Thank you for the questions. I'm sorry that's all that we have time for. I'm sure there would have been more questions. And now to conclude the high-level part of today's Market Access Day, I would like to ask Minister Margus Tsahkna to give his reflections.
Honorable European Commission Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis, dear colleagues and guests, I'm very happy to stand here in front of you, and as you can see, this pulpit is not meant to give speeches off of paper, it's all digital. What I wanted to say was that these are interesting times. I also spent some time in the private sector and communicated to a lot of Estonian companies, and my job was to find markets and establish relationships outside the EU between public sector and public sector companies. And in the last few decades, we have, after exceeding the EU, thought about how to manage within the EU. Then more and more companies in Estonia are looking at the global markets, and we see the gains of being in the EU, that we have a common policy of the EU, outside the EU. And when we look at the events of the recent years on international level, then economic relations, unfortunately, are becoming more politicized. So coping alone has become more difficult. It's very complicated for a state to manage on its own, not to mention the companies operating in Estonia more widely. So the global competition is extremely tense, and it's not as safe and open as it used to be. Now, protectionism is what I wanted to outline. It's very important that Europe understands that we have powerful economic capacity. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a visit to the US, and I chose not just New York and Washington as the destinations, but I went to the state of Arkansas in order to understand what are the inland debates. And the main message I heard was that Europe is weak, the US is paying Europe, and the economy in the US is struggling like many other democratic economies, and the main job is to create jobs. And the main message was we don't want to keep paying Europe. But I had $300 million worth of an order of HIMARS rocket carriers from the state of Estonia in my pocket. And I was happy to say that in the state of Arkansas, we will establish 150 jobs for the next 18 months, and that the EU is one of the biggest establishers of jobs in the US. And this news catch people by surprise, and that means that even we don't always understand how powerful the EU economic force can be outside the EU. When we speak about Estonia, then the era when we were a cheap labor country is over, and entrepreneurs know that it's not so easy to provide cheap subcontracting. We require more brains and added value. Estonia is known as an IT country, but we have a lot of other industry as well. And the issue is, how can the state help here? One of the goals that this 6 months old government, quite old by Estonian terms, one of the objectives is that we must become a country of headquarters. And this does not mean that we will only try to bring investments to Estonia, which we have, but it means that Estonian businesses should be willing and capable of buying up world economy and also outside the EU. So the policy we have as a state and as the EU must be shared. There's no shortage of ideas, but we face other challenges regarding our size, the access to capital, labor issues, or among other things, sense of security to go outside the EU and undertake bigger global projects. And do we have the hunger for it, the appetite for it? I believe that our companies have the appetite. A separate topic that was mentioned is Ukraine. What will happen to Ukraine? And one of the priorities of the Estonian government is making sure that with speed, not with scale, we can intervene in the process of restructuring, reconstructing Ukraine. Estonia has chosen 2 projects that were launched during the war and that have been completed. One of them is a kindergarten, second is a bridge. They don't seem like very large-scale projects, but for us it was important to establish a mechanism, a process, where the procurement takes place in the EU, in Estonia, and in the case of the first, an Estonian and EU companies completed the project, and secondly, it was Ukrainian companies implementing the project regarding the construction of the bridge. And what we wanted to demonstrate was that during the war it is possible to carry out infrastructure projects. Secondly, all the money that has been invested in the project, we know what has happened to each and every euro. We wanted to overthrow the myth that you can't do anything in Ukraine because people think that everything will be stolen. That's not the case. And I'm happy to say that we work closely with the European Commission to make sure that Estonia, at least to a certain degree, will become the center or a hub where part of the Ukrainian reconstruction process goes through and would offer opportunities for our own companies as well. But there are lots of question marks here. How do we ensure the companies' investments, how to support the companies that are already operating there, and how to create a sense of confidence, because without security guarantees, private funds will not go to Ukraine, and with public taxpayers' money, the project of reconstruction of Ukraine will not be possible over the next few decades. It's a huge project. I'm jumping to a different topic, but it's very relevant. In Oslo, when I had a meeting with the Secretary of State, with Anthony Blinken, then he was convening different arguments why NATO should become a full-fledged NATO member after the war. It might seem like inadequate what I'm saying right now or strange, but it's not. Public taxpayer money will run out soon, and especially in the US, taxpayers will not want to contribute to reconstruction of Ukraine. The success depends on whether private capital wants to and dares to go in. Without security guarantees, it will not happen. And the only security guarantee that the Western world can offer is full-fledged membership of NATO, not other agreements. So with the different topics, we see very different aspects. And in this very complicated world that surrounds us, that is becoming more and more complicated, the EU must maintain unity. And I call on Estonian companies as well. The EU is not something far away. We are the EU. And in very practical issues, even the EU and Commission can help out our companies, provide this confidence regarding the environment, and also the measures that I hear from time to time are not taken up. The problem must be with the measures, not the entrepreneurial spirit of the entrepreneurs. And when we look at the economic shift, then we are facing great changes. And there's a great potential in Ida-Viru County. One example of how private capital plus the European Commission have acted together is the new magnet industry, new magnet plant. If you haven't heard, then it's Canadian private investment together with the European Commission to Ida-Viru County. It has great outlooks, and it's a political undertaking in the sense that dependence on China and all the rest is very topical right now. And Estonia, with its brains, its innovation and location, has a lot to offer. So thank you very much for the visit. Thank you very much for the envelope that was handed over today to our Prime Minister with the few €100 million. And I do hope that in public-private partnership, we can relaunch Estonian economy and EU economy. Thank you. And I would like to thank the Minister for the contribution to today's event. But that's not the end of the event. As the Commissioner and Minister continue for their own meeting, we will listen to the last presentation of the day, which you can watch over video.
Good afternoon, everyone. Growing, you are because producers from outside the European Union offer the same product at much cheaper prices. Then you see these prices, you see they are really abnormally low, and you cannot compete against that. So then you wonder whether there is anything that you can do to remedy this. And that's precisely the role of trade defense, and that is what this presentation is about. The message I hope to pass, and especially for small and medium companies in the manufacturing sector, is first, that trade defense can have an impact on your business in the Union, So knowledge about it could help your company. And second, that we have resources online and you can always contact the Commission to learn more about trade defense. I have to say that the presentation is aimed towards small and medium enterprises because we're increasing outreach for these companies, but this may be useful for all companies in the manufacturing sector, as well as for companies whose main business is to use imported products or just to import products. Okay, so why do we have trade defense instruments? As you know, and as you saw this morning, the European Union is committed to open markets and free trade. I mean, this is because international trade is a powerful engine for growth and for welfare. But then free trade must be fair, and this is not always the case. There are some trading practices which are considered unfair and can damage European Union producers. Then the European Union, Europe, must protect its citizens and companies against such practices. So that's the reason to have trade defense instruments. They are a tool to counter such practices and restore a level playing field in the union market. Keeping with the introduction, I want to make 3 main points about trade defense instruments. The objective, as I said, the form it takes, and that finally it is a matter of fact and law. The objective is to protect European production against certain unfair trade practices, only when these practices are harmful to the domestic. I mean, there are 3 words here that are important. One is production. It's a tool to defend domestic producing companies, so producers, manufacturing sector. Then certain harmful practices. We can only address concrete practices. That would be dumping, subsidization in a third country, or sudden surges of imports. We will see this on next slides. And finally, they have to be harmful. I mean, we can only act against those concrete practices, distortions, when they are already causing damage to the European industry. This means, summarizing, that it's limited in scope. The second to insist on is the form that trade defense takes after an investigation. Normally, the way we act is a duty on imports, so a duty at the border. As I said, this is against concrete products. They cross borders and they go through customs. And that is why the protection takes the form of normally a duty on imports. This also means that it can have a significant impact on all companies in the Union that produce this product, but also those that depend on that they use it as an input to produce other products. And the final point I want to make here is that trade defense is a matter of fact and law. I mean, anything we do, it has to be compliant with trade organization and the European Union rules, that is basic regulations. Also regarding the procedure, and then regarding the facts, it is normally demand-driven, meaning that we start to start a trade defense investigation. This is normally based on a request from the union industry, and then the investigation will be based on data from the industry, and then any conclusion is based on the investigation that also requires big data from companies. This means that companies involved in a trade defense investigation have to cooperate, and the cooperation of companies is critical because it's their data that start the process and that shape the result. Okay, keeping on with the introduction, as I said before, we can only act against concrete practices in third countries, and these practices are dumping from the exporting country, subsidization in the exporting country, or a big surge of imports. We have an instrument for each of the 3, so the anti-dumping instrument, anti-subsidy, and also safeguards for surge of imports. What you see on this slide is just an overview of the 3 of them. I want to be brief because the objective is that you go online later and you see the resources. So I'm to get into the substance for each of them, but I'm going to touch briefly on the conditions for us to impose anti-dumping duties, anti-subsidy duties. To impose these duties, our investigation would need to find 4 things. First, the distortion. for example, are dumped or subsidized, or that there is a surge of imports, this is investigated on the third country, for example, China. So European Union companies wouldn't be very involved in this part of the investigation. Then the second one is that there is injury to the union producers. This is where European Union manufacturers would be involved. We define injury as a deterioration of the economic situation of the domestic industry in the union market. It has to be in the domestic market. Two remarks here. It's the deterioration of the whole industry performance, not just 2 or 3 producers out of 10, supposing there would be 10 in the European Union. And it's their performance in the union market, losing sales, making less profits in the union market. The third condition we need to impose is a causal link. That simply means that the injury or the deterioration, the bad performance of the union industry is because of the dumped or subsidized imports. And finally, and this is also interesting for importers or users of the product that would need to face the duty, is that if we impose measures, they cannot be against the interest of the union. This is what we call the union interest test, and we would analyze the effects of imposition or not of the anti-dumping, anti-subsidy duties on all interested parties in the union, and this includes importers and users of the product. I mean, this is normally a balancing act, and it's a binary decision. We analyze the positive effects of imposing measures for producers against the negative effects that imposition would have on the union as a whole. And on this basis, we conclude whether we impose measures or not. This basically means that knowledge about trade defense is also very important for companies whose main business, or for those that would use the product subject to investigation. Finally, on the 3 instruments, as I said before, the remedy is normally a customs duty at a level that corrects the distortion. On safeguards, it's a bit different because normally we would put a tariff rate quota, because on safeguards, the problem is not the distortion, but more the volume of imports that are coming. I hope everything is clear so far. Okay. So, to sum up the previous 2 slides, trade defense instruments are tools that may have a big impact on companies, and on which companies have a big role to play. As you initiate the process, the companies are subject to the investigation. We, the Commission, would ask you for data for the investigation, and we would ask you to give this data to us in very concrete deadlines. And this requires a lot of resources and knowledge. And this is what leads us to small and medium companies, or more generally to companies. And what I would say is the most important slide of this presentation. You see there a QR code. This code links to Digitrade's website on trade defense for small and medium enterprises. Everything I'm telling you in this presentation is there. And there you can find most resources also in Estonian. So before going on, I would ask you to please take out your phones and scan the code and store it somewhere where you can find it later. And why are we doing this for small and medium enterprises? Well, as we know, I mean, the small and medium enterprises are the backbone of Europe's economy. They are 99% of businesses in the EU. They employ over 83 million people. That's 64% of employment. They're more than half of Europe's GDP and play a role in adding value in every sector of the economy. It's around 52%. But as we also know, small and medium enterprises often have less resources than bigger companies. And as I explained before, trade defense is technical, subject to strict rules, requires active involvement from companies, and can have a high impact. So this is why the Commission wants to facilitate access to trade defense for small and medium companies. That is also the reason for the website that we're trying to improve now. That's also the reason to explain what trade defense is, why this may matter for your company, and how you can use trade defense or react. So if your industry faces unfair competition, If an investigation concerns one of your input materials, or if you are working in exports and imports, this information may be relevant for you. Okay, so I hope everyone got the QR code. Now, a bit more on substance, going back to trade defense. I come back to three things that I already said, but this is merely to illustrate why knowledge about it can be important for your company. First of all, it's demand-driven. It's a tool for union producers, manufacturers, and it is them that have to start the process. The Commission can also initiate a case on their own initiative, but this is very, very rare. So normally, investigations are initiated based on a complaint by the union industry. I would say the operative word here are complaint and union industry. The complaint needs to have sufficient evidence justifying initiation. I mean, it's not simply saying, I believe country X is dumping. You need to provide data, emails, offers, define the products, etc., etc. And the second point is that it needs to be lodged by the union industry. This is not just one company or two companies. It has to be a number of companies sufficiently representative of the union industry, at least 25% of union production. So to start the process, organization at European level sometimes is critical. Then the procedure and the investigation. To come to the remedy at the end, we need to do an investigation. The investigation, as I said before, would be fact-based because, as you have seen, most of the data the Commission needs to conclude to impose measures come from companies. We need data from a lot of companies. For example, if we want to establish dumping, we would send two teams to investigate Chinese companies, supposing that the investigation is against China, and asking for the data. In Europe, and this is more relevant, we would have teams that visit and investigate union producers, and we would gather their data, for example, their sales in the union market, their their profits, their exports, to see whether there is this injury I explained before, this deterioration of their situation. And then when we investigate the union interest, we would go to users, that is companies using the product that we're investigating in their own production process, or importers that simply import the product, to see what would be the impact on them if we impose measures. For example, when we go to users, we're very interested in knowing how much of their costs using the product under investigation would represent, because the higher their costs, I mean, the more they use this product, the higher the impact the duty would have on them. To do this, I said there, set stages, set deadlines. We follow a very strict procedure with different stages and concrete deadlines. So following this, it's very important that the companies involved understand the stages, what would be required of them, and the applicable deadlines. As I said before, it is the cooperation of companies that leads to a result. And finally, the procedure is also rules-based. I mean, we're not only bound by the World Trade Organization I mean, we're bound by World Trade Organization rules and also by our basic regulation, but not only on substance, but also on procedure. And as examples, we're also bound on the rights of the companies that cooperate or are involved in the investigation. For example, I'm going to talk a bit about the rights of parties. If we start an investigation and your company registers as an interested party on that investigation, you would acquire rights. For example, you could submit us information that we would use for the investigation. You could access the investigation file, the open file for inspection by interested parties, that would, for example, allow you what's going on, the timeline of the investigation. So if one of your companies is hit by an anti-dumping investigation as a user, or if you're a producer and you want to know what's going on, it would be very important that you registered as an interested party in the investigation. And when we initiate an investigation, we give companies instructions as to how to do this. Another important thing about the procedure, and that is rules-based, is confidentiality. This is a this is a very common concern of companies, and especially small companies. Just know that the data you provide for the investigation can only be used for that purpose. We do not share them with anyone else. I mean, not even inside the commission. We respect the confidentiality of data. For example, if we investigate a company and we need their prices by product type, this is not made available to other companies. And finally, in an investigation, the rights of defense are guaranteed for all parties. The deadlines are the same, the procedure is the same, and we cannot deviate from that. Another example of what trade defense is about and why this information may be useful for you if you see yourself involved in a trade defense investigation is the timeline of an investigation. This slide is an example, not everything is there, but you have some different stages. And here I explain what would be required of union producers, when, and the different deadlines. As I said, I intend to be brief, so I'm not going to explain anything, and this is information you have on the website. But some examples of how this may be useful for you. Well, if you are a producer and together with others, you lodge an anti-dumping complaint, then you should know that the Commission has 45 days to take a decision on whether to initiate the investigation. You should also know that 25 days after you officially lodge that complaint, your company will receive a form that would ask them to provide certain data about the, the volume of their production and their sales in the European Union. It would be with a deadline of normally 10 days. This is what on the slides is called standing forms. This would be also useful if you're an importer. For example, you would know that provisional anti-dumping duties may be imposed 7 months after initiation, and to be ready that the Commission will communicate that decision and the level of measures, so the level of the duties, 4 weeks before imposition. And finally, other things you find on our website is, for example, the duration of the measures. That's useful for all companies involved. Normally, we impose measures for 5 years, and there are different possibilities for review of the measures to change the level, etc., etc. And all this is explained on the website. Now, with the next 2 slides, I would like to give you an idea of what's at stake for the companies. So I'm going to explain what is the remedy. As I said before, it's a customs duty on importation, and what is the possible impact. I mean, here you have an example of how an anti-dumping investigation would get to the concrete duty. In the example, we have company A in a third country that is selling domestically at the equivalent of 100 euros, let's say, in whatever it is in the domestic currency. But then the same product is exported to the Union at 75 euros. Then the goods arrive at the Union border, and they are the value that with insurance and freight and to the Union. And let's suppose that in this case there are no taxes on imports, so these 80 euros are the price at which they are sold in the Union. Well, then following the definition of dumping, we would conclude that company A in this third country is dumping, because dumping is exporting a product at a price lower than its normal value, which would be the profitable price in the domestic market. In this case, as you see, the price in the domestic market is 100 and the export price is 75. So the dumping amount would be 25. Then, when we conclude the investigation, if all the other conditions are met, if these imports that we have established are at dump prices, if they're damaging the union industry, and there are no reasons of union interest not to impose the measures, we can act. In this concrete case, the investigation would result in an anti-dumping duty of 31.25%. That would be the dumping amount, that as we saw was 25, that we express as a percentage of the cost insurance of freight, so the CIF union border price. This, as we see in the next slide, would be the level necessary to correct dumping, the unfair practice. And now, the reason why knowledge about trade defense can be important for your company. That is the impact of or what happens after we impose measures. Follow example of the last slide. Now there is an anti-dumping duty in place of 31.25% at the union border. This duty would correct the unfair practice, that is the dumping. The imports that were entering the union at a dump price that was 80 now would do it at what we call a fair higher price. So they would come at 105. Then I think this makes very clear what the impact of anti-dumping or duties or trade defense instruments can be. I mean, it has an impact on union producers selling the same product in the union. Their competition from the third country that was dumping can no longer sell at 80. Now they would sell at 105. So this means ideally that when we impose measures, the union producers can recover lost sales, they can raise prices so that they make more profits, they can continue growing and creating jobs. Now, the other side of the coin, it's importers or companies that depend on the product for their own production process. That's what we call users. I mean, to continue sourcing from the country that was dumping, now they would need to do it at fair prices by paying the anti-dumping duty. So what these companies would face is price increases with the consequent impact on their costs and profits. So they may find that it does not make sense for them to keep on buying from that company, that country. They may want to change their sources of supply, or they may want to adjust their business. This is why knowing about trade defense can be very useful. And to finish with my last slides, I go back to the sources of information that we have on the website and back to small and medium enterprises. So we have seen that trade defense can have an impact on your business in the union. Also, that it is a process that relies on data from companies and that cooperation is important. As I said before, it's union manufacturers that start the investigation. It's data from union manufacturers, users, and importers that shape the investigation and lead us to a result. We have seen that it is technical, and we have seen that the procedure has set stages and deadlines. So this is why, to help small companies and all companies, the Commission has created a specific website and also a dedicated help desk. The objective is to facilitate access to the instrument, and here you have some examples of what is there. For all companies, we have general information on trade defense, the rules, the deadlines, the procedures, the data required, the rights of parties. We have a guide for small and medium enterprises and an online course in all union languages, also in Estonian. Then another example is that, as I said, the process is demand-driven. I mean, it's the union industry that comes to us and has to lodge an official complaint. So for producers that may want to know how to start the process, there is a guide for complaints. This is also in notice. We have the link to our ongoing and completed investigation website. For each investigation, you can find on each one the documents we used, like the regulations imposing measures, the notice of initiation that tells you about the deadlines when we start the investigation, and the questionnaires for each investigation that are pretty standard. So there you could see what would be required of you as a union producer, as a user, as an importer. A different situation, but for which we also have information, is when another country, let's say for the United States, they decide to open a trade defense investigation against the European Union. This would affect companies that are union exporters exporting to that country. For that, we also have a guide to third country investigation in all languages as well, that helps you understand the process and what you can do to get a more beneficial result, hopefully. And finally, we have the contact details of the different departments in DigiTrade dealing with trade defense, and the contact details of the small and mid-price help desk. I'm going to finish with two examples of how this information is useful. Going back to the question I showed in the second slide, I mean, for example, if you have a company that produces and sells products in the European Union, and you think you are losing sales or profits to abnormally low priced imports that you think may be dumped, and you want to know if you can do something about it, as I said, you can go to our website and you would find the guide and the online course for small and medium enterprises, the guide to how to lodge an anti-dumping complaint, and also the concrete contact of the complaints office, which is a department that deals with the initiation of investigations. Another example is if you are an importer, I mean, your main business is import products into the European Union. That means you just import and resell, and then a trade defense investigation may affect your business. So a question we receive in a lot of investigation is whether the product a company is importing is subject to this investigation. I mean, for that, the general information on the website would be useful, but as I mentioned, this also links to our website on ongoing investigations. So if you're an importer, you can subscribe to that website and you would receive updates, and then you would receive all notices of initiation, which is the document we publish informing we start an investigation. And there you can check what the product is, whether it concerns you or not, and you would also have the contact details of the team dealing with the investigation, so you could contact them with questions. And of course, in any instance, the small and medium enterprise help desk. Okay, as a final remark, as I say there, experience has shown that even small and medium enterprises can use trade defense instruments to their benefit. Here I have some example of products from such industries. I mean, this is ceramics, bicycles, both conventional and electric, and iron or steel fasteners. I know Estonia is most focused in IT and a services economy, but still this may be useful for your companies. So to conclude and wrap up, knowledge of trade defense can help your companies, whether they're producers, importers, or users. The small and medium enterprise website of DigiTrade has information on trade defense instruments, deadlines, procedures, etc. So if you're interested, please visit it. For queries on trade defense, you can always contact the small and medium enterprise help desk. And a final note from the Commission is if your company is in Estonia or associations of small and medium enterprises want to know more, the Commission is always available to organize, of course in cooperation with member states, seminars specifically targeted at small and medium enterprises. And with that, I finish my presentation. I thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Kas meil on küsimusi? Jah, meil on seal.
Do we have any questions?
As you like.
Okay, hello. I'm Anu Malnaarits from Visionist Institute, and we train SMEs in export and global trade. And my question is about trade defense. Can you tell me how much would setting one claim cost for an SME, and how many hours of work should an SME do in order to protect their interest in trade defense? Thank you.
Well, it's a very good question, and unfortunately, I cannot give you a number. It really depends on the case. We've had everything. Sorry, I have some kind of echo here. But what we can say is that normally SMEs find the process difficult. In cases we've had with a lot of SMEs like ceramic tiles, they depend a lot on organizing themselves very well at national and European level. and it would be the association that represents them. Then for a sampled company, a company we investigate, I mean, I would say is 2-3 months of work for the accounting department and a bit the production department to reply to the questionnaire, to be there when we perform the on-spot verification. But maybe there I'm exaggerating with 2-3 months of work. Then what we have also, and we've had this in some cases, is cases where the European Union industry, it's just a few companies. In fact, we have a case now ongoing where the complaint, the initiation, was lodged by a single company, a small and medium enterprise from the Basque Country in Spain. And just getting the case initiated took roughly a year. There were many, many drafts. I think it was considerable work. They were assisted by the Commission, by the Complaints Office. They can always come with their questions. And it's something remarkable that a single company managed to get this through. However, I have to say that in terms of time, it's not more than other bigger industries sometimes need to have the complaint lodged. But to come back to your question, I cannot give a number. It also depends on the sector a lot and how good the evidence of what's happening can be. If you see some cases against the United States, I mean, it's pretty easy to manage the investigation. I mean, against more difficult countries like China, or where you cannot find things, is more difficult. But the whole idea with the website and with the assistance is indeed to help small and medium enterprises that may not have the same amount of resources to have some access to the instrument and understand it, and logically come to us if they want to know more or if they need some kind of assistance. Thank you. I hope that replies the question.
We had the businesses represented, and I hope that you all found some sort of new angle for yourselves you're not aware of before. And outside, I heard that not many of you knew anything about this market access portal. And now it takes time, of course, to be familiar with it. Ronald Reagan said that one of the worst sentences is that I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I hope you don't need a state aid, but if you would need, then you should know that some of the tools are here on the state level and also on the EU level. Thank you very much for coming. And next time when we have an event like this, then on the stage we have more ladies present. So this is it, and I'll see you again next time.
Na na